Cold feet, even in a warm room, heavy legs by evening, a moment of dizziness when you stand up too fast. These aren't just things that happen after 60.
They're your circulation telling you something specific, and most people spend years explaining it away as just getting older. The honest research-backed answer isn't a supplement or a procedure. It's 5 ordinary cooking oils, each working through a genuinely different mechanism, sitting in stores you already shop at. Stick with me all the way to the end, because the 5th one carries the single strongest piece of human trial evidence of anything on this entire list, and I'm going to tell you honestly about the one time that evidence got messy and had to be corrected in public, which is exactly why it's still worth trusting more than almost anything else here. And if you've already tried cutting salt, walking more, propping your feet up in the evening, and the cold feet are still there, that's not a personal failure. It usually means the piece nobody mentioned was sitting in your pantry the whole time doing nothing because nobody told you which oil actually does what. Before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from today. Hit subscribe and tap the bell for notifications, since I cover circulation and heart health like this every week. And one more thing, if you're already dealing with cold feet, heavy legs, or dizziness right now, type A1 in the comments. If you're watching ahead of time, before any of this has started, type 0, I read all of them. Quick and honest reason this is worth your next several minutes instead of a scroll past. Most videos on this exact topic name a compound that sounds impressively scientific, attach a big percentage to it, and move on before you can ask where that number actually came from. That approach works fine right up until someone checks it, and at your age you've earned the right to stop being talked down to by content that assumes you won't. Every oil on this list gets its real mechanism, its real research, and its real limits stated plainly, since a claim you can verify is worth more to you than one that just sounds convincing on a... First, listen. One honest note before we start. If cold feet, standing dizziness, or heavy legs are sudden, severe, or getting rapidly worse, that's a reason to see a doctor, not a video, since it can signal a real circulation or cardiac issue. Needing direct attention. What we're covering today is genuine dietary support for ordinary, gradual, age-related circulation decline, not a diagnosis, and not a replacement for anything your doctor has already told you, or any medication you're already taking for your heart or blood pressure. Here's the one idea worth understanding before the list itself, since it's the reason just use oil is a real strategy and not just a pleasant-sounding suggestion. Your circulation depends on the endothelium, the paper-thin inner lining of your blood vessels, staying flexible enough to relax and widen the moment your tissues need more blood. In your 20s, that lining does this without any effort. By your 60s and 70s, 4 things have usually been quietly wearing on it for decades: constant pressure and resistance in the vessel walls, oxidized fat circulating in your blood, chronic, low-grade inflammation, and oxidative stress from ordinary cellular wear and tear. None of these announce themselves with one dramatic symptom on the day they start. They just quietly accumulate until cold feet or heavy legs finally get loud enough to notice. Today's 5 oils split across those 4 pathways. One addresses pressure directly, one addresses circulating fat, one addresses inflammation, one addresses oxidative stress, and the finale actually has real evidence touching more than one of these at once. 5 different targets, which is exactly why this list beats picking one favorite oil and assuming it covers everything on its own. None of this replaces the basics your doctor has probably already told you: moving regularly, not smoking, keeping blood sugar in a healthy range. Those still matter more than any single oil ever. What today's 5 oils actually do is remove one quiet obstacle sitting underneath all of that, so the rest of what you're already doing has a better chance of showing up in how your legs and feet actually feel. Number 5, garlic, used cooked into meals regularly, rather than as a rare garnish on special occasions. This is the one most people already have sitting in the kitchen and most under use for this specific purpose. Garlic's active sulfur compounds, allicin chief among them, form when a clove is crushed or chopped, not when it sits whole in its skin, a chemical reaction that takes a few minutes to complete, which is why letting crushed garlic rest on the cutting board briefly before it hits the heat actually matters, rather than being a fussy chef's habit. Pooled results from more than a dozen randomized controlled trials consistently find that garlic supplementation lowers systolic blood pressure by somewhere around 5 to 8 points in people who started out with elevated blood pressure, with far less effect, sometimes none at all, in people whose pressure was already normal to begin with. That's the honest shape of the finding, real and worth acting on if your numbers already run high, not a universal boost that shows up regardless of where you started. Lower resistance in the vessels feeding your arms and legs means less work for blood actually reaching your fingers and toes on its way back. One caution that genuinely matters here. Garlic has real, documented mild blood thinning activity. So if you're already on a prescription blood thinner, that's a real conversation to have with your doctor before making garlic a daily habit, not a footnote to skip past on your way to the next oil. If raw garlic upsets your stomach, which is common, and nothing to feel bad about, cooked garlic worked into soups, sauces, and roasted vegetables still delivers a meaningful dose. It just needs those few resting minutes after chopping before the heat goes on. Number 4, avocado oil. And this one works through fat quality rather than any single standout compound. Its main fat, oleic acid, has well-established research behind it, showing that when it replaces saturated fat or refined carbohydrate in your day, the kind sitting in butter, fatty cuts of meat, or fried food, your cholesterol balance shifts in a genuinely favorable direction, with LDL tending to drop. I want to be precise about where the strongest evidence actually sits, though. The biggest, best-controlled human trials were run on whole avocado fruit itself, not the bottled oil specifically. And those trials found meaningful drops in LDL, somewhere in the range of 6 to 17 points, depending on the study and the dose. The oil shares the exact same primary fat, and the underlying mechanism lines up, but oil-specific human trials are genuinely thinner on the ground than the whole fruit evidence, and that's worth knowing rather than quietly blurring the two together the way most videos do. What the oil clearly has going for it on its own is heat stability. It holds up under normal stovetop temperatures without breaking down into the harmful compounds that damaged, overheated fats can produce, which matters because a healthy oil that degrades the moment you actually cook with it isn't solving anything in real kitchen conditions, only in a laboratory beaker somewhere. A tablespoon or two a day, used in place of butter or a more processed cooking fat, rather than piled on top of what you already eat, is a reasonable evidence-aligned way to bring it into a normal week. Comment avocado below if this is one you're going to add to your cooking this week. Notice the shape of what we've covered so far. Garlic works on blood pressure directly. Avocado oil works on the fat circulating in your blood. Two different targets, not two versions of the same advice with a different label on the bottle. The next three go even further into the kind of nuance most videos on this topic skip entirely, because it takes more work to explain honestly than to round everything up into one impressive sounding. Number 3, flaxseed oil, the richest common source of a plant-based omega-3 called ALA. Pooled trial data shows a real, if modest, drop in inflammatory blood markers like CRP with regular flaxseed intake over several months. But here's the honest catch: almost every other video on this topic skips entirely. One of the more rigorous trials, the kind that measures blood vessel dilation directly with an ultrasound instead of just checking a blood marker, found no real difference in actual vascular function compared to a control oil over 12 full weeks. So the inflammatory marker case is genuinely solid. The direct blood vessel function case is still honestly unsettled, and I'd rather tell you that plainly than round it up into a bigger promise than the current research actually supports. Flaxseed oil is also genuinely fragile. Heat breaks it down quickly and can flip a protective fat into one carrying breakdown products your body has to deal with instead of benefit from. So it has to be used cold, stirred into yogurt, blended into a morning smoothie, drizzled over a finished dish, never anywhere near a hot pan. A tablespoon a day used this way is a reasonable, evidence-aligned habit. Hit that like button if this is helping you understand your circulation a little better. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who need to hear it. Number 2, sesame oil, and this is the one most lists like this skip entirely, probably because the evidence base behind it is newer and noticeably smaller than the others here. So I want to flag that honestly up front rather than let it sound as settled as the rest. Sesame oil's natural lignans, sesamin and sesamol chief among them, are potent antioxidants, and several small randomized controlled trials in people with mild hypertension found measurable drops in blood pressure alongside markers of oxidative stress, likely through a combination of mild enzyme effects on the same system your blood pressure medication may target. plus simply mopping up free radicals before they get the chance to damage the vessel lining directly. The trials behind this are real and properly randomized. They're just smaller in size and fewer in number than what backs garlic or olive oil on this list. So I'd call sesame oil a genuinely promising, still developing case, rather than a fully settled one, worth using with realistic expectations. Use cold or added at the very end of cooking. Since traditional toasted sesame oil has a low smoke point and burns easily, treat it strictly as a finishing oil, a spoonful drizzled on at the end of a dish or whisked into a dressing, not something you sear a piece of chicken in. The trials that found benefit generally used somewhere around a tablespoon or two a day, taken consistently over several weeks rather than as an occasional flourish. Number 1. And this is where the deepest evidence and the single most interesting molecule on this entire list happen to be the exact same bottle, extra virgin olive oil. Start with the molecule because it's genuinely a good story. In 2005, a researcher tasting fresh olive oil noticed the same peppery, throat-catching sting he recognized from liquid ibuprofen and followed that hunch back to his lab instead of dismissing it. What his team found, published in the journal Nature, was a compound now called oleocanthal that inhibits the exact same inflammatory enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, that ibuprofen targets at a comparable strength measured directly in a controlled lab assay. That's a genuinely interesting finding, and I want to be precise about what it actually is and isn't: an enzyme-level laboratory result, not a clinical trial measuring blood flow or leg symptoms in real people over time. And a video that tells you otherwise is rounding a lab finding up into a claim the research doesn't actually make, which is exactly why the second piece of evidence matters so much more than the molecule does. A large randomized trial in Spain, more than 7,000 adults at elevated cardiovascular risk, followed for close to 5 years, assigned some to a Mediterranean-style diet built around a generous daily amount of extra virgin olive oil, roughly 2 to 4 tablespoons a day. Others to a standard low-fat comparison diet. Over several years, the olive oil group had roughly 30% fewer major cardiovascular events, heart attacks, strokes, and related outcomes compared to the control group. And here's the honest part almost no other video on this topic ever mentions. That exact trial was actually retracted by the same medical journal in 2018, 5 years after its original publication, because of an error in how a handful of study sites had randomized their participants, not because any of the underlying data was faked. The researchers went back, reanalyzed the entire trial with the proper statistical corrections applied, and republished it that same year in that same journal with essentially the same conclusion. Intact, still roughly a 30% reduction. I'm telling you that whole messy public correction on purpose, because a study that survives its own retraction and reanalysis with the result unchanged has actually been checked harder than almost anything else on this list, not less trustworthy for having been questioned. That's not a lab enzyme reading. That's real people, followed for years, with real medical outcomes counted honestly at the end. And it's the same vascular system carrying blood to your heart that's also carrying it out to your legs and feet. If a video ever has to choose which finding to lead with for excitement and which one to save for credibility, the one that survived being checked twice deserves to be the one you actually remember walking away, not just the one that sounded most impressive in the moment. Here's how the 5 actually sit together in an ordinary kitchen, since none of this needs an elaborate routine or a full pantry overhaul. Garlic crushed and rested a few minutes before it hits the pan, worked into regular cooking rather than saved for special dishes. Avocado oil for anything that needs real heat, searing, roasting, sautéing. Sesame oil drizzled on at the very end off the heat entirely in dressings or a finished stir-fry. Flaxseed oil kept strictly cold, stirred into something already off the stove, never near the pan itself. An extra virgin olive oil underneath all of it, the daily backbone, used generously rather than as an occasional garnish reserved for company. One habit that protects the benefit in all 5, heat, light, and time, degrade the exact compounds we've spent this whole video talking about. So dark glass kept away from the stove, used within a reasonable window rather than sitting half full at the back of a cupboard for a year, where the bottle actually provides one. A harvest date matters more than an expiration date.
And if what you're feeling is sudden or rapidly getting worse, cold feet that are numb, dizziness that's severe, That's a call to a doctor, not a kitchen project. Pay attention.
Ordinary age-related circulation decline responds to everything we covered today gradually, over months of consistent habits, not overnight. And a sudden dramatic change belongs to a different category entirely, one that deserves real medical attention, rather than being quietly managed with kitchen changes alone. Cold feet in a warm room, heavy legs by evening, that moment of dizziness standing up. We opened with those, and now you have 5 genuinely different mechanisms working on that same underlying problem from 4 different directions. Plus, if you stuck around to the end, the honest story of the one study on this entire list that got publicly retracted, corrected, and came back stronger for having survived the scrutiny. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 is your favorite, or which one you're most excited to try this week. If you'd rather have real checkable research than an invented compound name and a percentage nobody can verify, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because that's exactly what we'll keep doing here. One honestly reported oil at a time. And if you know someone over 60 who's dealing with cold feet, heavy legs, or circulation issues, send them this video. It could genuinely make a difference for them.